Hi, I'm the Space Quest historian. Okay, here we go. Space Quest 3. Now, if you put a gun to a Space Quest fan's head and ask them which is your favorite Space Quest game, you're gonna get either Space Quest 3 or 4. I'm dead sure. And all of you who are yelling in the comments already, it's Space Quest 5, shut up, just shut up. Space Quest 3 is a fantastic fucking game, and I will hear no words to the contrary. It is absolutely beautiful from start to finish. It's just gorgeous. And what we're looking at right now is, of course, the IBM PC version, which has some of the most beautiful 16-color graphics you're ever gonna see in your life. It has a smashing soundtrack by Bob Siebenberg, the former drummer from Supertramp. We are listening to the ad-lib version of the soundtrack. I know people will swear to the Roland MT32 soundtrack, and of course that is also the sound card that Bob composed the music on. Most people, I would wager, have listened to this rendition, the ad-lib, the so-called OPL3, which was the chip used, the Yamaha chip used in the Sound Blaster and ad-lib cards of the 90s, simply because it was the more affordable option. Very few people could afford the MT32, but my god, the MT32 sounds amazing. Why am I going on about sound cards? Well, I am because Space Quest 3 is... You know, the sound design and the music in particular was a big selling point for this game. Having a famous composer do the soundtrack for a computer game in 1989 was kind of a big fucking deal. And getting like a rock star like Bob Siebenberg, sure, he was the drummer, but he was a drummer in a very, very well-known band in the 80s. Supertramp was not just like small piddling shit. So it was a big deal. Rock and roll soundtrack by Bob Siebenberg, holy shit. So it's kind of interesting to see how the other versions of this game repurpose his soundtrack. Bastardize is probably more the word I would use, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. As Roger is being lifted up to his garbagey fate on board the garbage freighter here, let's just check in and see how the Atari ST version was doing. Okay, here we go, launching the program. Yes. I've always wondered about that wait icon. Is that a bee? Is that a why is that an insect? I don't know. Also, this is taking a phenomenal amount of time. Oh, there we go. Sierra Creative Interpreter. Look, the Atari ST version by Corey Cole. He finally got the credit he deserves, and we're off and running. Oh, we are off and running. We are waiting for this thing to load. Okay, I think something's happening. The mouse cursor disappeared for a second. No, we're still loading. Still loading. Yes, it'll come. I'm sure it'll come. If you wait, if you build it for the Atari ST and then wait for quite a while. Oh, it will come. There's the hand icon, the famous wait cursor from Space Quest 3. So things are definitely happening. I'm sure at any moment now. Any moment now. Oh, it faded in and out. Oh, is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? Is what? Oh, we're back to the arrow. And no, yes. Any moment now. Honestly, I would not be lying to you. Just there we go. That's a rendition, sure. As you can see, the Sierra logo just sort of cascades down. The bits of it don't shoot in from the sides of it. That's some lovely chiptune music we've got going there. Oh, but now things are gonna kick into gear. Now we're gonna rock out. Or not. Or I guess it's doing its best, but not really, actually. From what I'm told, the Atari ST had some pretty nifty sound capabilities. Again, I'm not an ST expert. I don't know if the Atari ST from 1989 had any of the wonderful sound capabilities that were touted. Is this thing still loading? It's still... Oh, there we go. here we go, title screen, my god. Anyway, there was a vibrant tracker community on the Atari ST for a brief spell. It had it had capabilities that included recording and playing back PCM audio. That would be digitized audio samples, but I'm not entirely sure if the Atari ST of 1989 had those capabilities, and certainly it doesn't appear as if Sierra were interested in the slightest in making that happen on the Atari ST, not from this point on. And this is, in fact, the last time you'll see a Space Quest game on the Atari ST. After Space Quest 3, they stopped making Atari ST versions of their games, probably because the later Space Quest games were quite advanced and probably beyond the scope of what the Atari ST could do, and if not, then probably because the Atari ST, as far as I've read up on, died an awful, painful death because publishers were actually losing money by making Atari ST versions of their games, and they were losing money because piracy was just so rampant on the ST market, and it was everywhere, and it was just the accepted norm. It was like the Commodore 64 days. How the Commodore 64 survived, I have no idea. Apparently, you could still sell games with the Commodore 64, but by the Atari ST days, the piracy pretty much tanked the system. At least if you are to believe, well, Wikipedia. I read that on Wikipedia. But anyway, we've finally come to the garbage freighter, and is anyone noticing a tempo problem? I mean, not just in the music, but in the you know what? Let's get into the game and see if things fare any better. And the loading process has begun, and I'm just gonna flat out say it. Things don't improve from this point on. The Atari ST version is just absolutely god-awfully slow. The load times between screens will take anywhere from 10 to 30 to 40 seconds off your life. And it's just, look, it's still loading. It's still loading. And we're just going up the conveyor belt. Once we get around the conveyor belt, it's going to have to load another screen. And boy, well, we can certainly say this for the Atari ST. When it crashes in a fairly spectacular way. Boy. Well, it's a very ominous way of crashing, but this, it would seem, is the result of a disk image that's not quite up to snuff. So how about we just go hunting for a different disk image, and let's try this again. Okay, here we go. New disk image. It is loading. We are up the conveyor. There we go. The screen finally changed. And, well, it's not in any hurry. I'll give it that. You have time to think. And the sound effects are, well, they're there. They certainly tried, I guess. I don't mean to be mean to the poor old Atari ST. For all I know, this is just absolutely as far as the poor machine will stretch. Now, this is running the emulator. It is running the oldest version of the Atari ST, which I figure would be the one that actually came out in 1989 or thereabouts. So for all I know, this is just pushing the machine to its absolute limit. Once we get up here on the railway, I'm actually turning the speed up. If you hit the plus key, the speed will actually turn up. I didn't see a particular speed increase until we get to the next screen, and whoop, off he goes. There we go. That's a bit of a speed increase. So the speed of the game is actually not just dependent on, you know, the speed setting in the game, but also how many moving parts are currently on screen. And the game will speed up or slow down depending on how much animation is going on in the background. Once we painfully slowly load the next screen and get on into the droid room here, we'll see a noticeable decrease in Roger's movement speed once again. You know what? I'll just skip the loading time. There we go. Another peculiar thing is once you get to Fleep Hunt, you'll notice that the Arnoid doesn't so much disappear as he just sort of poofs into nothingness. There's just a screen fade out and a screen fade in, and off he scoots. Which is a bit weird. I don't know why they couldn't do that little pixelated transition of the Arnoid, but I guess they didn't. Okay, now here's a question. Check out this close-up of the Arnoid grabbing Roger by the lapel. Or, well, actually, what part of his clothing is the Arnoid grabbing onto? It seems like there's a bit of Roger missing. Or maybe the Arnoid just has a really good grip on the dude's underwear, which would explain Roger's expression, of course. Hey, look at me dodge this Scorpisoid. Come on. Here we go. Well, on your marks, get set. Oh, here we go. Okay, go, man, go. You can do it. You can make it. And he clears the finish line, and everyone just sits back and chills for a while. Okay, but enough harping on the slowness of the Atari. You know one thing that actually works really, really well? Astro Chicken. For some reason, the arcade conversion of Astro Chicken is just so fantastic on the Atari ST. In fact, it's a little too good, because I was kind of used to the sort of wonky controls of the PC, and it actually took me a couple of tries to sort of rejigger my internal muscle memory to figure out how to control this little thing, because once you get him close to the paddle, all you have to do is lightly tap the up key and he'll land every sweet ass time. And look, even when he starts like really off screen, you can easily navigate him to the pad. And there, I was just a little off on the timing there, but there we go. Nice and smooth, down we go. In fact, this is pretty much a perfect run. I don't crash a little fucker a single time. Took me about 3 game overs to get to this point. But I'm kind of blown away, actually. It almost makes me think that Doug Oldfield, the programmer at Sierra, whom to blame is Astro Chicken. That was a weird way of saying that. Who is to blame for Astro Chicken in Space Quest 3, might have actually programmed it on the Atari ST. Look, here we go. The secret message is loading. There we go. There's the secret message. And now we use the decoder ring and there we go. There's the secret code. Okay, so Astro Chicken works like a charm on the Atari ST. But anyway, enough harping on the Atari ST. I'm sure they did, the best they could with the given circumstances. And let's head over and see how the fellas in Amiga Land are doing. Yeah, right, so when this thing gets going, you will be treated to an absolute wonder and delight of your auditory senses. It will be an absolute treat. Remember how when in the previous episodes I said that it was kind of a pity that Sierra didn't use the Amiga sound chip for anything noteworthy in Space Quests 1 and 2? Like, it just used the bleeps and bloops of, some chiptune-y stuff. Just, they didn't go in and do, like, any orchestral stuff. Well, with Space Quest 3's original soundtrack being, like, this MT32 powerhouse, you would imagine that the Amiga would just knock this out of the park. I mean, the Amiga plays digitized samples. Are you listening to this? I know it's hard with me talking over it, but pretty much what they did was sample the MT32, like really low quality, low fidelity samples. And granted, the Amiga didn't have like super high quality CD quality samples to work with, but these are these are just piss poor samples, honestly, of the MT32, and it's running a bit slow, isn't it? This is definitely someone who went in and redid Bob Siebenberg's soundtrack in a mod tracker format with samples of the MT32 and did a phenomenally weird job of it. It's slower, and that's not the emulator's fault. It does run slower. Granted, you've got only 4 channels to work with, but that just means you can have 4 concurrent samples playing, at the same time. Within those channels, you can have any number of samples playing as long as they, don't play at the same time. So I would think that you could do a bit better, but then again, I'm not sure I could do better. But I think I'm stalling a bit here. I think what we are really here to hear. That's a weird way of saying that, but I know what we're really here to hear is Roger speak for the first time.
Where am I?
Good God. Do you have chills? Because I have chills. I mean, when I saw this for the first time, and I was thinking of the times when I was playing Space Quest 3 and I was going, why couldn't we get that? Why couldn't we hear Roger speak in the PC version? Because the PC version didn't support Sound Blaster. Or so we thought until the invention of the internet and, well, have a look at this. Okay, so here we are in DOSBox fiddling with the DOS version of Space Quest 3, and we are setting the sound card to Sound Blaster, which would, in theory, enable digitized samples. I realize this is not the original Space Quest 3 install program, but that doesn't really mean anything. This is the same install program you'll get with your GOG or Steam collections and your old CD-ROM collections of Space Quest 3. And here we go, we're skipping the intro because an easy way to check if digitized samples are working is to listen for Roger's footsteps as he lands on the metal ground. Check this out. So that is clearly the AdLib synthesizer doing that sound effect, but what if I told you could go to spacequest.net, click on Space Quest 3, and then under Patches, download a sound driver fix, which you just basically put in your Space Quest 3 directory and unzip, and I'll show you in a minute. See, what is so bizarre about Space Quest 3 is that it actually ships with a Sound Blaster driver, which is why we can select it in the install program, but that sound driver doesn't work. So basically what you do is you unzip this patched Sound Blaster driver, you copy this IRQ 5 and 7 driver, which is the one that just works out of the gate with DOSBox. You paste that into your original Space Quest 3 folder, and then you boot up the lovelies. Yeah, so this actually means that you can now play Space Quest 3 with all the digital sound effects intact, including this lovely little thing.
Where am I?
Yep. And the reason why Space Quest 3 has this wonky Sound Blaster driver is really long and a little weird, and I actually wrote a blog post about it on spacequesthistorian.com back when that was a thing, but I won't get into it right now. In fact, let's get back and see how the Amiga is doing. So, actually, the Amiga version isn't half bad. It's just a little weird, and it's mainly weird in the audio departments. The Paula chip of the Amiga is just doing an absolute piss poor job of emulating the grandiosity that was the Roland MT32, and it's a weird choice for them to try and emulate that sound instead of, you know, playing to the Amiga's strengths, the mod tracking strengths. You could do like a nice little remix of the main theme. I guess that's just that wasn't in the cards, and I guess maybe that would do Bob Siebenberg a disservice, but other than that, Amiga version of Space Quest 3 pretty much looks exactly the same as the PC original. It's the same 16-color graphics, it's the same animations, it's pretty much just the same thing, and which is also a little weird given that the Amiga had a 32-color palette, but they didn't do any alterations whatsoever. It looks and plays exactly like the PC original. So I didn't really bother playing further than this. But that's okay, because my mate Pickle Dog played through most of the game on his own time. So we'll just check in and see how he did. Oh my, he's actually made it quite far. Oh, okay, let's have a look at his notes. The primary visual difference, Pickle Dog says, is how they chose to render the EGA palette. So apparently EGA has a white level that's a bit bright. So bright red is actually a little pinkish, which looks good enough for skin. Oh, I can see he's trying to save his game now. Yeah, we'll just wait for him to kick this robot's ass. So anyway, the Amiga version of the EGA palette has just bright red as being bright red, which makes Raj look a little sunburned. So the palette is a little off in comparison to the IBM PC version, but not anything I noticed. He's not doing very well, is he? Oh my. Well then, well shit. Anyway, so there's a couple of things with the sound effects. Some of the sound effects are all messed up, but anyway, I've already covered that. Dear me. Yeah, so Pickle Dog never actually made it past the Nukem Dukem Robots bit, so I have no idea how the outro looks, but I think we've seen enough of the Amiga version anyway. I think it's time to head over and check out how the Macintosh version's doing. All right, here we go. Notice the scary looking little Festerblatt's icon. Off we scoot. Whoops, no one saw that. Lovely little crack intro-y thing there. And here we go. Space Quest 3 running on the Macintosh. You would not believe the shit I had to go through to get this running. Macintosh emulators are really a strange and intimidating landscape to dip your toes in. Fact of the matter is, I now have 3 separate Macintosh emulators installed, and they all sort of work, but not quite. So what I went through to get this running is just a lot of crossed fingers and dumb luck. The text boxes, as you'll see, are just zipping by in a hurry. I swear that's not me just clicking away because I'm impatient. That's because the timer on this is a bit off, and I'm not sure if that's down to the emulator I'm using or if there's something else at play here, but the timer in this game is just all over the place. Now this text box stays on screen for a very long time, and that's because it's waiting for the music to finish. Now let's have a listen to that music. That sounds a bit like wavetable music, or at least it sounds like well, it sounds comparable to the MT32 in some ways, and we've also got digitized sound effects, so you'll hear Roger say, "Where am I?" later on, and you know, there's actually a few more digitized sound effects in this than there are in any of the other versions. I believe the garbage compactor conveyor thing on the garbage freighter has its own sound effect, which I don't remember hearing in any other versions. So on the sound side, we're actually being treated to some lovely things, but the Macintosh did have some lovely things to offer on the sound side. What we're also seeing is very strange. I think some of you may have noticed this already. We are actually looking at an upscaled version of Space Quest 3. Now the original PC and the other versions of it run in 320 by 200. The Macintosh version seems to be running in a slightly upscaled window and is somehow drawing the original vector graphics in a manner that, you know, makes it look more high resolution, which is also very strange, and I don't think we've seen anything like this. There was a project, I believe, called FreeSCI that ran on Unix and Linux, and it purported to be able to do these sort of high-resolution-ish kind of things with SCI games, you know, because these aren't bitmaps, these are vector graphics, so in theory you would be able to upscale them, but also by upscaling them you're confusing the original engine because, you know, it's doing stuff it's not supposed to. Oh, hang on, let's have a listen. Come on.
Where am I?
There we go. Nice. The original graphics are drawn in 320 by 200, so by upscaling them, you're suddenly confusing the engine and having it, you know, draw stuff that's not supposed to be there, filling in some spaces that weren't supposed to be filled in, but by and large, the Macintosh version gets away with it, and gets away with it pretty well. So the graphics are actually in a higher resolution than the PC original, which is very, very strange. We've done away now with the absurd point-and-click sort of interface from Space Quest 1 and 2. Now the interface is just, you know, the same as in the PC version, and you know the drill. You start typing, a box pops up at the bottom of the screen, and off you scoot. We'll see this when I enter this next room and try to climb into the grabber. But the thing about this game is the timer. Yeah, I can spell too. Lovely. The thing about this game is the timer. Have a look at this droid, which is supposed to, you know, just sort of scoot up and blast you if you take too long. But look at him. Look how eager he is to get up there and get in my face. He's not supposed to do that for like a minute or so. And when we get later into the game, let's just fast forward a bit here. When we get to the World of Wonders and we get accosted by the Arnoid droid here, well, first of all, bits of Roger are missing again. I'm not sure what that's about. He looks a lot more frightened than he does in the PC version, but also look how little time I have to run away from the Arnoid. He just grabs you instantly. So what I end up doing is actually going into the game settings and turn the speed down, because the game speed is not just controlling the speed at which Roger walks, and it's actually controlling the entire game world speed. So, here's Fester Blatz looking glorious as always. In fact, this resolution, this high resolution, might be too much for poor Fester's lovely face to bear. Anyway, leaving World of Wonders, getting accosted by the Arnoid droid again, but this time much slower. In fact, if you have a particular affinity for speed reading, you might actually catch some of what he's saying. He's gonna dust me like bunt cake, and off I scoot. Go, 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 man, go! And look at that, he's right on my fucking heels. Look at that. He could reach out and twist my neck if he wanted to, but like he said, he's in a good mood, so he's not gonna... Oh, and I barely make it into the elevator here. And this is just how the game plays. The game just plays fast and loose with the timer. It's like the timer is just cranked to 11. However, in a cruel, twisted fit of irony, the fight against Elmo in the big robot here is actually kind of a piece of cake. I mean, I just saved my game in a panic because I'd seen Pickle Dog's footage, and I was going, okay, I'm gonna get my ass kicked here, but nope, we're off and scooting, and he is not doing any damage to me whatsoever. Also, have a look at that crowd, that lovely vector crowd. You can really tell the game is upscaling shit here. But well, that's it. Down he went, and off we scoot. And at this point, I'm just going, well then, this is gonna be just an absolute cakewalk, isn't it? And... okay, let's have a look at the screen. Let's get those shields up. Let's prepare for the final fight against the Skull Fighters of Pestilon. Here we go. Attack speed, and oh, here they come. Let's get into the weapon system, put up those shields, and, well, maybe not. Maybe I'll just sit here and die like the idiot I am. Uh, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. Let's give this another shot. Maybe we just need to be faster. Maybe we just need to not listen to the two guys at all. Let's just get in and hit attack speed and hit the weapon system. And, well, thankfully this is point and click. This is mouse driven, so at least we can use the mouse to, move the crosshairs around and get busy and freaky in that order. No, we can't. And also, they seem to get out of range pretty damn fast. At least they would if I, had the time to actually react, which I don't. So I went back and turned the speed way, way down, and no more messing with the mouse, just hotkeys and just off we scoot. They always come from the back first, so up go the shields and out of range. And you really have to be fast with switching shields because they don't fuck around. There's a pattern to this. They'll come twice in the front and then you have to switch to the back. But normally you can sort of read the bottom left target display and get a bearing on where the skull fighters are coming from. Not so much here. So anyway, I could not get past the skull fighter section at all. It just kicked my ass. I maybe got 1 or 2 ships just out of pure blind luck. But, no. Couldn't actually get past the Skull Fighter section. I would go as far as to say it's impossible. Unless you get really, really super lucky. And I just don't have that kind of time. So, I'll bet you're wondering how Astro Chicken plays. It plays awfully, thank you very much. It is really finicky. Unlike the Atari ST version, Astro does not want to go anywhere. You hit the direction keys and every once in a while it does something, but most of the time it just does that. It just crashes to the fucking ground. He runs out of feet really fast, and sometimes he just dive bombs the fuck to the ground and you are absolutely screwed. I played this section a lot of times, and eventually the game just sort of gave up, even though I was on my last life. Look at me struggling with this shit. It just sort of gave up and gave me a pity win anyway. I think it's coming up in just a second. Would you land? Nope, never mind. Off you scoot. Yeah, there you go. Game over. But it actually just gave me this pity win and displayed the the secret message anyway. So here we go. Secret code in very hard to read small fonts. Have fun decoding that when you can't see the entire message. Good job with that. And you know what? I'm just gonna go out and say it. If this is how Space Quest 3 actually ran on the old Macintosh, it can fuck right off. It's upscaled, it sounds pretty good, but the gameplay is just super infuriating when you have this little reaction time to some very Twitch-happy, arcadey sequences. So, I figured I'd end the video by showing you how Space Quest 3 looks in the monochrome version, because you can run the Macintosh version in monochrome and 256 colors. I don't know what happens if you run it in 16 colors because I don't have an emulator that actually runs in 16 colors. I tried. As I said, I have 3 different emulators, but the documentation for them is, well, it's written by old people with beards that used to write stereo instructions, I think. So it's not my field. And but you can see the upscale graphics here a lot more clearly. You can see the thin little lines. Well, partly because the screen resolution is now a bit smaller, so you can actually see the upscale graphics. And it's really fascinating how they did that. But the timer bugs remain the same. The same emulator, just a different build, a monochrome build of the same emulator. So the game is not fun to play, but it's interesting. And again, I believe there was this fan effort called Free SCI that was working on trying to upscale SCI games, the SCI 0 games, which would be Space Quest 3 and King's Quest 4 and Codename Iceman, if anyone wants to see that in high res. And it only runs on Linux, so I have no idea how to get that running, but my mate Brandon, who runs spacequest.net with me, is looking into it. It would be very, very cool to have the upscaled graphics, for the vinyl edition of the Space Quest 3 soundtrack, which I have put up on Bandcamp and will be doing a vinyl crowdfunding campaign for soon, once all this viral pandemic sort of takes a hike and stops bothering people. But anyway, speaking of Mac emulators, since I've been showing Space Quest 1 and 2 in monochrome, and I worked out how to get Space Quest 3 running in color, I thought I'd just briefly try and get Space Quests 1 and 2 running in 16 colors. And, Nope, fuck Mac emulators. Fuck them. I am done. I don't want to waste any more of my life messing with this horrible nonsense. So next time we'll be having a look at Space Quest 4, but I am leaving the Macintosh version well alone. To my knowledge, it is not that different from the IBM PC version, but there are several different versions of the PC version that are very interesting to look at, as well as the much maligned Amiga version of Space Quest 4. So I hope to see you for that, and until then, around the Chrono Stream. Bye.